Hi everybody, Dana Litwin here again, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. And this week, kind of the end of June summer season, let's talk about event planning 101. And event planning is probably one of the many hats and skill sets that you have as a leader of volunteers. We have to mix a lot of knowledge and ideas of different sectors of nonprofit or even corporate work to really effectively do our jobs. And I've seen and met a lot of colleagues who are put into a position or they're new to a role as a volunteer coordinator and they don't have event production experience. So this is really just a good intro to some of the basic concepts if you're needing to tackle that. And hopefully these tips also help you if you are, like me, a veteran and you either want to review the basics or there might be a couple of tips in here that you haven't heard before. So I hope that these help in your kind of summer party planning season. It's summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. So the big question around event production is that I get a lot, and I've produced online events, especially these last few years of the pandemic, and been a part of groundbreaking hybrid events as one of the hosts of the Alive and Better Impact hybrid conference that was doing the cool thing of hybrid and accessibility for conferences well before pandemic times pushed a lot of people to learning that skill. And I've also produced in-person events for agencies that I've worked for, government agencies and nonprofits, as fundraisers, as giant public events, just for fun and entertainment, for brand awareness. So really knowing the goals and outcome, what are the outcomes of success that you want from your event is really the first place to start. And again, as a producer, I've been asked recently, which is more difficult to do, virtual online events or in person? And the answer is yes. They're both challenging in their own ways, and their approach is the same up to a point, especially in pre-production. And then of course there are going to be differences in how technology is used for either event and how you register people, how you promote it. But let's dive into some of the basic tips for event production 101. I think the best model remains a hybrid model. A hybrid conference or hybrid event is more accessible generally. If people are still COVID cautious and don't want to be in person for an event, masked or unmasked, then this offers a way to tune in. But especially if you're doing this event as something for a wider audience, like a general fundraiser or something that is for program awareness, a program launch or a new initiative or something new with your agency, and you want kind of maximum widest possible audience and accessibility for that audience, then a hybrid event is the way to go. So you might have some people in person on site where your organization is, or remotely on site, which is how the Alive Better Impact learning event is held. Or you could decide to strictly do only in person, like a volunteer appreciation party, or only online, like some other kind of fundraising or promotional or learning event, like a mini conference or a series of workshops. So, knowing what level of technology you're going to need is crucial to the planning. The most important part of any event production, or really any media production, is pre-production, is planning it out and coming up with a timeline. And I've got some other Tuesday tips that I'll link up here to previous ones about project management and GANNT charts and things and templates and tools you might use in pre-production. But I think a pretty simple shared Google Sheets, shared spreadsheet is really the simplest way to go, either shared calendar or shared spreadsheet. And if it gets really complicated, then you can do special event hosting software and invest in that. But it's usually not necessary if you can just utilize a typical video streaming platform like Zoom. So pre-production and a shared timeline where people can keep track of what they're accountable for, what their responsibilities are, whether something has been accomplished by its deadline, who is there as backup support, or who's on the team, who's the team lead, and who are the other people on the team in charge of it. Those are pretty typical things to have in an event timeline. You may also include, if this is especially a more internal document, like when things need to be paid. When does a caterer need to be paid? If you're renting an event venue, when is that due? Do they require insurance? So there can be a very simple production timeline that's just kind of events and color-coded, or names and dates that's pretty simple. Or it can be a lot more complex, where you can click fields to get notes and add a little more detail and have that available for folks so that there's a clear communication. And that is directly related to the next tip. Key elements of success for any kind of event: open and regular, clear communication. That goes hand in hand with trusting and empowering any experts or specialists on your team, whether those are temporary hired vendors or contractors, or volunteers, or paid staff in other departments like your marketing department if you're partnering with them to promote this. But really kind of the role of an executive producer for an event is to support the work of everybody else without micromanaging, and really staying out of the way and being the one who can remove obstacles to people achieving their goals, their outcomes, their milestones, or their success. So I've met too many event producers. I've also produced a lot of theater and music and improv, and traveled to other people's festivals for music and theater and improv. And once in a while you run into an event producer who's the person running around frantically micromanaging everyone, and that's no fun. It's no fun for the guests. It's no fun for anybody working or volunteering at the event. So really take on the executive producer role as someone who kind of monitors how people are doing and checks in with them if they need anything, or they know to come to you if they have a question, need a problem solved, need more information to figure something out. But really kind of removing obstacles is your primary job as a producer, and, getting snacks and writing checks. That's also true. When you define realistic goals and outcomes of success for the event, again, the flavor of that's going to change depending on if this is for fundraising or brand awareness, community outreach, general audience stuff, or if you are celebrating a specific person like retiring, or a longtime volunteer leaving the agency, or just a volunteer appreciation or recognition party in general. But having realistic outcomes of attendance, of what type of audience, if it's an external public audience, what are the demographics and target audiences, and where are they? What social media are they using? So again, relying on either other departments who are experts in marketing and PR and outreach, if that's not part of your many hats as a leader of volunteers, but also empowering specialized volunteers who are good at this, who can really be good at a certain production task or a certain event planning task. And that brings me to whether or not to use a party planning committee. And I've done events with a small group of producers, like maybe 5 or 6 people, or even 2 or 3 other people besides myself, planning things just fine. And I've often been with agencies where there is a board member or multiple board members or other stakeholders who really want to be involved, or it's traditional for that agency, for that type of event, to have a party planning committee. And one quick word of caution about a party planning committee is make sure that everyone on the committee, if this is within your power, actually has the skills and the knowledge and the time and the energy to do the things that are assigned to them. Because very often I've experienced event planning committees where a couple people just kind of show up and are seat fillers, or they might have an idea here and there, but they don't really do the work, and the work falls to the same few people who've always been doing the work, and that isn't really fair, and that can build up resentment or miscommunication or just poor planning that leads to a not as successful event. Also, it's important when you think about shape of show, I kind of use that term from my theater days, that you want to plan how much is structured showtime in the event, how much is structured time on an agenda or a program, and then balance that. Again, this works either hybrid, in person, or online, and balance that structured showtime with unstructured social opportunities, or frankly, if it's something like an all-day learning event, that there are planned bio breaks, planned rest breaks, planned breaks in, again, more for a learning journey to absorb the information or do exercises remotely, or just to have time to have the wisdom in the room, open discussions, again, on Zoom or in person or in hybrid. So kind of that structured versus less structured or unstructured time is a good way to have an overall successful event that a lot of different people can enjoy. And promotion, talked a little bit about it, but if you have to do this by yourself, then it is really good to delegate and tag in volunteers or other departments or staff members if they're willing to help to do the promotion. It's really hard to be kind of a logistics producer and a promoter at the same time. I've had to do it, but it can really stretch your time and your energy very thin, especially if you're new to one of those, you're not as confident in one of those skill sets. So don't be afraid to delegate, like I talked about in recent Tuesday tips. And if you're doing a virtual or hybrid, of course, technology checks at least a week, sometimes 2, in advance of the event is ideal. Are some of the program pieces of media pre-recorded? Are they all live? So really just double, triple, quadruple, centennial, 100th check of technology platforms and internet connections and things like that for everyone who's beaming in or involved is absolutely key. And then the day of checklist, especially if this is in person, of making sure that if you're doing a hybrid or in-person event, that any of the volunteers, vendors, workers have scheduled breaks, schedule shifts to overlap so that, nothing is left empty or there isn't dead air when someone needs to take a break or if something comes up. And do your best to have a deep bench of talent to fill in case someone calls in sick at the last minute, or there's a thunderstorm and the power goes out and they don't have internet anymore. So part of successful event planning is really thinking about as many things going wrong as possible and what are the backup plans. And then after the event, hopefully it's been a success, having that debrief and staying away from any kind of blame or shame, but really just taking kind of an emotionally neutral, honest look about, well, did we achieve our goals? Were those successful outcomes? Did that go how we expected it? Did something unexpected happen? And maybe we add that to the pre-production list that we cover or plan for next time we do something like this. So each time I've produced an event, even after more than 20 years of doing all kinds of event production and performance, something happens that you don't anticipate. And that's a learning moment. That's a moment to go, aha, and either have enough experience or improv training or spontaneity to respond in the moment and fix it. Or if something does go a little bit off the rails or not the way you planned, well, that's a lesson learned and you can hopefully plan for that a little bit better next time around. So I hope you have a great summer, plan a lot of fun parties, hybrid, virtual, or safely in person. And if you enjoy these Tuesday tips and you're not yet subscribed, please do that now and hit the little bell alert icon below if you want to know when I have videos coming up, not just Tuesday tips, but sometimes priceless advice or other videos to share. And we'll see you next time. Take care.